Hey, what's up, podcast listeners? This is Dan here. Today's episode is going to be something a little bit different. What you're about to hear is the voice memo notes that I recorded in my car after having a pretty intimate dinner with Gary Illyes from Google. This dinner took place April 4th, 2017. I received a message one day from Paul Shapiro saying that some people were getting together with Gary in Boston, and I was able to attend this dinner. We sat down with Gary for about 3 hours, and asked him questions and chatted about SEO and Google. And it's taken me a long time to share this because although this meeting was not under NDA and there was no explicit request to not share anything, I felt as if I should just give it some time before sharing what I had heard and kind of learned in this meeting. So bear in mind that this was just about over 2 years ago, so things do change, obviously, in the SEO world. I'm going to be interjecting and adding just a little bit of context to some of my voice notes from some of the things that I recorded that evening after this dinner. And it's come to my mind, especially lately, that if you have something of value to share with the world, and especially if that's easy for you to do so, then you should share that. So that's why I decided to finally release these voice notes from April 2017. If you prefer the interview episodes, feel free to skip this one and come back to the next episode. But if not, I think you'll find a lot of value in these notes from this meeting, from after the meeting. And there's things about ranking factors, about links, about what to do when you mismanage redirects, all kinds of good stuff in here. So I hope you enjoy this and get some value out of this. And we'll see you in the next regular episode of Experts on the Wire. Thanks. Okay, so trying to remember some things from the dinner with Gary. AMP is not mobile friendly. Let's see, JavaScript, hidden JavaScript is an issue when you have to click to get to that JavaScript. If it's within the HTML, that is fine. If somebody purchases an old domain and the content is different than what was on the new, if the new content is different from the old content on the old domain, it's like starting fresh. Also, if you have an old URL, this was the question /products. This next part of the memo was basically Gary's response. Someone asked him what happens if you have, say, like a software website and you only have one product and it lives on /products. But then throughout the years you add, new products, and so really the purpose and contents of that page and what lives on that URL at /products changes, and sort of how that might impact things. If you have an old URL and you put totally new content on there, it's starting completely fresh from a content and relevance standpoint. However, it can still pass what I'm going to call link energy or link value that's absence of any context or relevance. Let's see, what else do we talk about? Structured data. This was interesting. So structured data, the question to the guy on my left, Dan, he asked about a website that lost stars in the search results site-wide. And Gary's answer here was basically that they have a small set of site-wide ranking or site-wide signals that affect stars showing up in search results as a byproduct. But something important is they look for user loyalty, thus in the form of commenting, thus in the form of product reviews. I'm going to suspect perhaps repeat visits. But I think what he mentioned is, back to the site-wide signals. Panda, it sounds like, is a site-wide signal of low quality, and they actually have a Panda score. Whereas if that goes below a certain point, that could be lowering your site quality which then could take away the snippets. So my takeaway, which Gary confirmed, was that a loss of snippets can be a signal or it could be a sign that there's deeper quality issues site-wide with the site. This next part is somebody had asked Gary kind of the difference in 302s versus 301s, and can you actually mess up your redirects and tank your rankings by using 302s by accident instead of 301 redirects when you are doing a migration. And in fact, I make mention of a well-known case of Wired doing this. I believe when they switched from HTTP to HTTPS, it was thought in the industry at the time that when Wired used 302s and not 301s, that this is what caused their rankings to drop after migrating. But what Gary told us, and what you'll hear in my notes here, it was actually something different. Another interesting one was the question to 302s versus 301s, and Gary's answer being that in the case of somebody 302ing from HTTP to HTTPS, this was actually because they had some sort of spam blocker or some precautionary thing in place that prevented the passing of the signals of the HTTP to HTTPS. So this was something he mentioned was resolved in May of 2016. And it sounds like he personally helped resolve this issue. And he said that in the case of Wired magazine, what happened for them was not a matter of the 302s versus 301s. In fact, it sounds like Google treats those exactly the same because people often will use one over the other in error. This next part is in reference to, I asked Gary about a client situation where they had a very old legacy website with a lot of versions throughout the years, and they had old URLs of products and really important pages that they had never redirected. And these URLs had a lot of traffic in the past. So normally you would just fix that and redirect all those old URLs, but the problem is all their old URLs had very bad backlinks pointing at them. So I wanted to ask Gary what to do in that case, and if actually putting those redirects in place would harm the site, and this is my notes to his answer. When I asked him about the scenario where I'm facing ad where they had not redirected old pages, he did comment and say if they are getting, if the old URLs are getting traffic, it's a good idea to actually test redirecting those to the new pages. He said you can basically redirect those to the new pages and test to see if a bad algorithm or bad signals are forwarded, and you can actually undo the 301 and undo the forwarding of those bad signals. So his implication here is that you can actually test this and undo that more easily. I also asked Gary about a client situation where they changed domain names. So the brand name stayed the same, but they just got their actual .com without any extra words in it. And when they migrated, they lost a whole ton of traffic. I believe at the time they forgot to put redirects in place, and they also didn't do a site move in Search Console. We had since fixed everything. We put redirects in place and did a site move, but we were still not seeing their rankings come back to normal after about a month or so. So I asked Gary what to do in this case, and if that was actually a problem or something on Google's side. And then you'll hear my notes to his answer here, and then I'm going to follow up with actually what he told me in his email reply that I sent to him after this meeting. In the case of the migration, he has said, to which I'm going to follow up with an email to him, that it sounds like this is an issue on Google's side. If we have done the site move, it should only take a few days to pass the signals from the old site to the new site. It's important that the URL structure stays the same. There can be possible negative implications if you have a structure that had forward slashes and then a new structure that does not have forward slashes. That can be an issue sometimes. But the bigger issue is when you completely change your URL structure in addition to the domain change as well. As a follow-up to this situation with this client and their lost traffic after the migration, I emailed Gary afterwards and asked him, at the time I emailed, their traffic was not really recovering yet. His reply a few weeks later was, yes, in these cases, the site move requests are super helpful for our algorithms. They should have done the site move request as soon as they started redirecting to the new URLs. So basically, Gary just confirming that the site move is really, really important to do that and when you migrate something. I should let you know that since that time, this site is fully and way more than recovered from this migration. Another thing was the structured data tester uses the exact same system as their actual algorithm to check for structured data complacency. I also asked Gary about another client that was having a problem with a partial manual action. They had done some bad backlinking to a specific individual product page. And this page was not really important to them in terms of ranking any longer, but they were concerned that this partial manual action may be impacting the performance of the rest of their site. And what Gary told us here was pretty specific, and I've never actually heard this detail that you're about to hear in a moment anywhere else, even since this dinner took place. So I hope this is interesting for you as well. When I asked him about the situation for .com, he said to ignore the partial manual action. These have an expiration date of anywhere from 10 days to 3 years. And you could not do anything and these will go away. He said that in the past, the initiative Matt Cutts was taking was to be more penalizing with these, to actually punish sites that were doing bad things with bad links. But it sounds like their approach now is more to just ignore any bad links. He mentioned that if you want to be safe, if you are disavowing or removing links, you can always remove forum links or profile links. These are links if you set up a profile on a random website, or signature links for forums. You can always remove these and never hurt your site. He said if you are removing other links, you can actually very potentially hurt your site negatively if you remove links that may actually be helping you. He said they used to have a topical authority algorithm, which sounds like he said it was replaced actually by Hummingbird. So what they used to do was have an algorithm that said, and his example was, if you write about the topic of cancer for 2 years, 3 years, now you're an authority around that topic, and they may be more likely to rank you for searches that are relevant to cancer. But now they've actually unlaunched that algorithm, and it's been more or less replaced with Hummingbird. Hummingbird's job is to understand long tail, because they already do a good job with the head, and he referred to mid-tail as torso. He also mentioned to look out for if you've added a lot of new URLs that are of lower quality than the existing URLs that you have indexed and are getting traffic for. His advice again is to be no indexing and removing these what he calls low quality pages. This was to the question the guy was asking about Bazaar Voice as a review plugin, and that these are all generating their own separate unique URLs. And Gary very strongly suggested to be no indexing and removing these so-called low-quality URLs. I asked Gary about an issue a client had been facing at the time. When you search for this client's brand name in the US, they had a full branded result, knowledge panel, site links, the whole deal. But in Canada, where they were also pretty popular, there was no knowledge box on the right, and it was a less branded result. And this is my notes to Gary's answer. To my question about and why they're not getting a knowledge box in Canada, his answer was more or less that they haven't developed enough confidence around the fact that the intent of the user sitting in Canada is actually searching for that brand. This next part of the recording is in reply to Paul Shapiro asking Gary, how does Google, for example, know when somebody searches Ring, just the one word Ring in Google, that they're trying to get to the Ring video doorbell website? At the time, if you just put the word Ring, Ring.com, which is for Ring Video Doorbell, ranks number one, and you get the brand result, and they probably do to this day as well. And so Gary's answer was pretty interesting. He said, in the case of the example Paul brought up was Ring.com, very simply, they are using links to determine when people type Ring that they're looking for the brand and the product, the Ring Video Doorbell. They do try to more or less come up with the concept of a site. We got into the discussion of the fact that they do look for consistent templates across subdomains and subfolders in different sections. This was around the topic of the discussion of clustering, meaning multiple results from the same domain name in search results, and things that certain companies like Zillow are trying to do to get more clustering happening. He said this is more an effect of the fact that they don't have anything else of higher quality to rank. So in that case, that's when they will cluster results from one domain, because that creates a higher quality search result than the alternative pages that they could rank. However, I think he seemed to imply at the end of this statement that this is an easier type of search result to rank a different domain in. So maybe this is a potential opportunity for competitors. He also said it does not matter if you're on a subfolder or a subdomain for your blog. He strongly implied that for some brands, and he brought up the example of Facebook, they literally do not need to worry about links, as in building new links, or defensively removing bad links or disavowing bad links, that they have enough strong signals to outweigh any negative link factors. About domain authority, the conclusion here was that it's okay to use domain authority in an analysis as long as you're aware that domain authority can completely go away if the site was one brand or one company, it got shut down, and then basically started fresh with new content on it. They eventually want all manual actions and penalties link-wise to be completely replaced with the Penguin algorithm. They have more confidence in algorithms reviewing link profiles from a penalty standpoint compared to humans. Humans can be more biased, they can make more errors, and it's less efficient. He mentioned there being, back to these site-wide algorithm updates or signals, that I believe he mentioned at least 2 of these had updates in February. My hunch is that this must have to do with the February 7th update that impacted hearing. About the snippets, about the content being hidden behind tabs. What Google does not want to do is be clicking around on tabbed navigation or things that require clicks, because they don't want to click on something that's going to accidentally hurt the webmaster. So they don't want to end up like in a PHP login area or on a newsletter sign-up page. They don't want to cause these kinds of problems. So if something requires the fetching of content from a separate web page via JavaScript, that's where Google's not going to crawl it. But if it's a matter of the content being behind a tab, but it's in HTML, they can crawl that and find it. Also, they just won't utilize that. They won't bold that content in search snippets if it's hidden behind a tab, because their theory there is they want to only bold content that users will immediately see on the page. When he was asked something to the effect about ranking big head keyword terms, his answer was basically, look at what Wikipedia does. And if you want to rank for meat, have basically essentially a hub page about all the different types of meats that then link out to that, those specific subtopics. So essentially, ranking for those big head terms, basically look at what Wikipedia does. Hey everyone, it's Dan here again in 2019. Thanks again for listening to this sort of special, different, unique episode of Experts on the Wire. Again, I hope this was valuable for you. I want to remind you to just bear in mind the context of where I got this information and the fact that this was over 2 years ago, and things can change. So just bear all that in mind. If you want to hear more episodes like this, that might be things that I hear behind the scenes, maybe even meetings that I have with clients or consulting calls, things that are a little bit more just kind of going about my business, being an SEO consultant, and kind of all the things that I kind of pick up on, hear, and learn, let me know. You can send me a tweet at DAN_SHURE on Twitter. And let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts either way on this episode, and we'll see you again on the next episode of Experts on the Wire. Take care.